Good morning, Torbay. Welcome to the 7th in our series of Torbay Business Forum Breakfast Bytes. And you can see our wonderful lineup for you today across the screen. We have Carolyn Custerson coming to speak to us in a moment about the tourism side of things. Emily's looking after us, and she's been having a few technical issues today, but she's sorted us out and we're all here. And of course, we've got Uncle Jim there in his kitchen as usual with his bestest new apron on. He'll be talking to us about what Torbay Weekly has been getting up to lately. And of course, we have our very own Mark Salmon of Bayes Brewery and sponsors SSG. And over there in the distance, at the end of his boardroom, we have the very famous, our wonderful Simon Tong of Wild Planet Trust. And he'll be talking to us about the issues that the zoos and living coasts have had to date. Well, who'd have thought that on Friday, the 20th of March, we'd have listened to Boris say, right, folks, drink up, go home and stay home until further notice. Here we are sort of 12 weeks later, and I don't know about you, but the thought of reopening bars and pubs on this coming Saturday is one that I have a little bit of trepidation about, because we've already seen what's happened in Leicester. And our thoughts are with those people who are going to suffer for a while longer, but we don't want that happening again here. We've been very lucky in the Southwest, and I think we've been very fortunate in Torbay that I think we have got off lightly. And that's not to belittle anybody that has suffered personally. I have a cousin who was on a ventilator for 9 weeks, and 3 weeks later he's still in ICU. He's in London. So I totally understand the seriousness of this awful disease. Torbay Business Forum comes to you as a result of the work of a group of volunteers. All we want to do is bring businesses together to thrive and to grow. And we look at business infrastructure and skills. And you'll see we have talked many times about the English Riviera because it's where we live. And today she was on our first event. Very first back in on April the 7th, our first virtual breakfast, and we've got Carolyn back with us today. We also have Jim in his kitchen there. He's waiting to speak to us in a moment. He'll be probably talking about his pinwheels and his wonderful culinary exploits. But it's good to see you this morning, Jim, as well. We couldn't come here today without our sponsors, and I really want to send a big shout out to Insignia Creative. They've been sponsors and part of our exec team since we started doing these events with sponsorship. And I got a message from Pete at Insignia, and he has asked me to read out a big thanks from Insignia Creative to Torbay Business Forum for building such a cohesive local business community. That's very kind of you. It's great to be part of this naturally inspiring organisation. Talking of which, says Pete, it would be really good to see more and more businesses and organisations follow the lead of Torbay Weekly, one for you, Jim, and get behind the naturally inspiring place branding. If anyone needs the graphic source files to add to their website or print, message Peter Blackler on LinkedIn, and we will help. That's Insignia Creative. Will help get the very important, the files are copyright of Torbay Council, but freely available for anyone to use within the guidelines. So Pete, there we are, gave you a headline. Pete from Insignia Creative, Richard and Alan there, plus their staff, they'll be glad to help you. So thank you for your support. Now, without further ado, Carolyn, there's been a lot going on. I know that you have had limited resources and you're having to start up again. Can you tell us all about it? Welcome to the show.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Steve, very much for the invitation to present an update. It's all been a bit of a blur the last 3 months, if I'm honest. I've never seen anything like it in my 35-year career in tourism. So just summing up what's happened in the last 3 months is on this PowerPoint. I'm not going to read every line out of the slides because I personally hate being in the audience and having just lines spoken. I think the message I want to get across is it's been a massive impact, negative impact, COVID, with regards to our tourism and hospitality industry. It's an industry normally worth £550 million in visitor spend each year. It provides 12,000 jobs, and it's made up of in excess of 1,500 individual businesses. So to force that closure, as Steve said on Friday the 23rd, I don't think any of us will forget that night. And what happened immediately after that was mass cancellations, which have been, the problem regarding cancellations has been worsened by the fact that insurance companies currently aren't paying out, maybe only one I've heard so far. So there's going to be a legal case about that. There were very few forward bookings. Overnight, it dried up. And if you think in March, that would have been a peak booking month for domestic tourism. The phones just stopped ringing overnight. All major events have been cancelled. And there's some things you may not have thought about. We've seen the collapse of the group market because coaches can't operate with the numbers they're suggesting to stay safe. 15% of our 4.7 million visitors usually come from overseas. The overseas market collapsed overnight. That's all international inbound language school students. All of those groups cancelled, along with the conference and business market at the conference centre. And that's just all on top of the serious disruption of the domestic market, which is normally our main market. So we've been undertaking lots of COVID impact evidence research. Martin Brooks has been helping me at the bid company to do this. We've been liaising with Kevin Foster and Anthony Mangle as well. But we estimate to date we've lost £300 million of that 550 million. So it's a huge dent, and we're going to have a very big bounce back from that. Just a couple of other statistics. We've seen a 98% drop in turnover the last 3 months, April, May, June, and we are still, the government financial help has been embracing and significant, as we all know, but for many businesses it's only plugged some holes, and we've still got some businesses that haven't received any financial help, and more worryingly, we've got some businesses that are still forced to stay closed, and that includes all of our theatres and our water park. So we're going to need a big bouncy ball to bounce back from all of that. I'm confident we'll do it. The tourism sector is always highly resilient, but we have got a lot of gaps to fill. So if we go on to the next slide, please, and talk about the short-term priorities and the reopening on the 4th of July. And like Stephen, I too have some reservations, but from a business and economy point of view, we have to restart the economy. We can't just leave 1,500 businesses locked up forever. And so the 4th of July it is. We lobbied hard, working with the South West Tourism Alliance and with the Department of Culture, Media, Sport to make it the 4th of July. In their roadmap, it was always the earliest and conditional, but we pressed for the 4th to give businesses some opportunity to salvage some summer income. The 4th of July reopening is not a simple process. Last Friday, the government finally published their hospitality visitor economy guidelines, which was a 178-page document of all the adaptations, protocols, COVID controls that have got to be put in place with a different set of specifications for accommodation, attractions, food and drink, etc. It's a massive ask for a lot of small businesses who've never had to do anything like this before, and every business must have a risk assessment in place, ready for inspection if asked for, in order for them to open on the 4th of July. The reopening will mean, and the guidelines will mean, that things will be very different out there. And I think a lot of people are thinking they're just going to wander out and have a beer or a glass of wine or whatever. Life is going to be very different. From the food and drink particularly, you will have to pre-book a table. You cannot just turn up. You will not be allowed to stand at the bar. You have to pre-order food. Everything is in advance to give the employees and their safety the chance to, everybody to be looked after. So the government guidelines are all about looking after your employees and your visitors, and of course yourselves. So we've produced a lot of guidelines for visitors on the English Riviera website, encouraging them to plan ahead, undertake research, book things in advance, and a lot of our attractions are already doing digi-tickets in advance with a time slot like when you travel abroad, so that numbers can be controlled. That's what it's all about. But 178 pages has taken a lot of digesting. Destination marketing wise, we went straight out within 2 hours of the Prime Minister's announcement around the 4th of July. We had obviously started to prepare this some weeks back. And the simple message is welcome back. It's a digital national campaign that's being with these banners and posters being featured across major footfall platforms, digital platforms. And we saw an immediate spike as soon as we launched the campaign, which is very encouraging. We're also having to do a lot around local marketing because we feel that residents, we need them on side to be supporting our attractions, Save the Zoo, etc. So they need to be local tourists this summer and to support everybody. Responsible Riviera was a campaign that I came up with in thought about a month ago, because I started to get very concerned about messaging on social media from our residents towards prospective visitors, telling them to stay at home, etc. I've never seen that before in the 12 years I've been here. So we've been running a campaign with Jim, double page spread every week, highlighting businesses and the adaptations they've made and the changes they've made to become COVID secure. And I think that's helped settle things down a little bit. But leading in to the 4th of July and the Welcome Back campaign, and what Steve mentioned about Leicester, as a board, that we are very, very worried about potential public disorder and antisocial behaviour following what happened in Bournemouth. And I'm not going to labour on that today, but at the moment that is at the top of my priority list to have. And I know that Alison Hernandez was tweeting last night about putting extra support in place to keep public order. The bid company have made a decision to invest in some new beachside signage, top right. The leave only footprints will actually align to the council's new campaign, Bin It or Take It Home, so we all walk together. But we do feel that more signage is needed around the beaches and harbour side to try and the horrendous problem we've got nationally at the moment regarding litter, but the growing concern around public disorder and antisocial behaviour. So a lot going on in the short term. We're watching consumer data very carefully. What is a little bit worrying is the latest Visit England consumer data is showing that only 30% of UK households are planning to take a holiday or to move away from home this summer. That means 70% are literally going to do staycation in their back garden. So we've done some research, Martin said on some research, asking businesses about what level of income they need to make it through the winter into next year. And currently there's a gap between the potential number that we think will be coming to stay and the 50% occupancy as a minimum that accommodation businesses will be looking for. So the lobbying for continued financial support isn't stopping, and it won't stop, because we potentially see another cliff edge at the end of October. Just moving on swiftly to medium-term priorities. I've spoken about financial support, but I think in the medium term, and then when we move to long term, we have to start thinking about how we are going to recover from COVID as one of the UK's premier seaside resorts. I felt we were very fragile when he closed us down. some businesses, a very few, have managed to ride the storm. Others have literally, without the public funding, probably would never have opened again. And I think that the two things I'd like to highlight to you is, one, the English Riviera Bid Company's status as a destination marketing organisation recognised by government is critical going forwards. It did unlock extra funding for Torbay, and we are seen, we're seen as a very serious and responsible destination. So we need that ballot to go through next year, which we've yet to set the date. And the other big item is around product development. It's time that we started to move away from the traditional seaside products and to show some innovation and creativity, building on particularly our natural assets, to come up with new products to start to attract new customers, because we will be losing, I believe, a lot of over 70s in the coach market because of what's happened with shielding. And so we need to start to become much more creative. And obviously skills, digital, apprenticeships, all very high on the agenda, as is partnership marketing. So I'll finish on my last slide, so I'm kept to time. Long term, I think it's really very exciting what could happen. Working with the Heart of the Southwest LEP, with all the work that the TDA have been putting in, we're starting to build a momentum around the potential introduction of a Great West South tourism zone as part of the industrial strategy. It might not happen for 2 or 3 years, but if it does happen, it will come with a lot of support, financial support, and it will bring the Southwest together as a product again, as it used to be. That's the one thing that's happened through the last 3 months. The Southwest came together overnight, and twice a week I have phone calls with my Southwest colleagues to talk about what are the priorities, what's our key lobbying messages, and it's because we are lobbying as the Southwest that we have achieved so much more. I'm going to finish at that point because my time is up, and to say happy to take any questions. It's been a very, very fast-moving 3 months. I think the opening is critical. We just need to make sure that we retain our reputation as a leading family resort, and we just need to all work together as partners to safeguard that reputation, because if we were to experience something like what happened in Bournemouth or Exmouth, that really is going to be very, very damaging. So I'll stop at that point. Thank you, Steve.
Brilliant. Thank you, Carolyn, and thank you once again. You were one of our inaugural guests for the first event that we had, and it's great to have you back, and a very interesting update. I mean, you talk about 1,500 businesses there. It just shows how many people this really is affecting. You talk about support as well for business. When we spoke 2 weeks ago, folks, the government schemes for lending, as in the bounce back loans and coronavirus business interruption loans, was up at 31 billion. Well, as at the 23rd of June, it was 41 billion. So in 2 weeks, it's gone up by 10 billion pounds. So certainly the money is being lent and going into the businesses. It's just really whether they're allowed to open safely, securely, and carry on. We do have a question, Carolyn, has come in from Maureen Frost, has emailed in and saying, how will the tourism plan address the need to attract those with disposable income looking for experiences such as rib rides, jet skis, sailing, high-end restaurants, vintage cars, spa breaks? I think we're looking about maybe a reinvention of our customer base. Now, I think you alluded to that. Do you have any thoughts on how your marketing is going to be geared?
Yeah, okay. So we're already, by doing digital, you'll all know that you can target who you want to target. So we are targeting those medium to high-end income households in our key target areas. But I certainly wouldn't recommend that we'd go out just targeting high end, which is something the tourist board did in the past and it failed miserably. So we need to accept that as a destination, we have visitor assets of wide appeal, but you know, through the demographic targeting that we're doing, we will attract the sorts of people that have the disposable income, the empty nesters, etc., and also the young. We're targeting from 25 to 69 years old, and particularly we're trying to attract back what are called millennials, which, you know, they are the people that do like to you know, eat out and to hire the sorts of water sport equipment, etc. But the reason we're so successful as a destination is because we have wide appeal, and we need to make sure that we continue on that route.
Yeah, that's great. And I know you're alluding to that, to the fact we're talking about reinventing, looking at new products and a certain new customer base. There's another question has come in, this time from Pete Blackler. We're talking about the Bournemouth factor, and it's interesting how, although we don't want to have the same issue happening here, what could we learn from the fact that visitors flocked to Bournemouth and the hearts of Dorset as opposed to Torbay? Any thoughts on that?
Okay, well, it's a very simple answer. Within an hour of Bournemouth are more millions of chimney pots than we've ever got. So Bournemouth is literally an hour from central London. It's in a very high urban area. If you actually look at the Stretcher Coast and the big cities around it, Southampton, Portsmouth, you know, the potential customer base is probably 3 times as big as ours, and that's just our geography. So that's why you know the numbers were there. I think the Bournemouth situation, just to throw some light on it, I think that the media have been, the journalism, sorry Jim, but the journalism around the Bournemouth has been very unhelpful. It was bad, but if you look at the drone footage from above the beach, it wasn't as crowded closely as they made out it was. And I think at the end of the day, on the 13th of May, our Prime Minister said that we could travel to any destination and we could go and sunbathe. That's what our Prime Minister said on the 13th of May. So when there's a heat wave and you have been locked down and maybe you're on furlough, your kids are still off school, and you live within an hour of those beautiful beaches in Bournemouth, I think we all have to ask ourselves, would we not have been tempted to have done the same?
Yeah, I think that's a very sound answer. Thank you. I mean, do we want to paint ourselves as the English Riviera or the English Ibiza? I think that's maybe a question that some people might need to ask themselves. But I really appreciate you coming on this morning and giving us the update. Thank you very much. And if I could ask you to stay around, stay on the line, because there might be some more questions coming in. We would like to move on, and good luck with the marketing campaigns, Carolyn. Anything that the forum can do to help you with ERBid 2, please do let us know. And
thank you very much. Thank you for the questions.
Yeah. So Jim, I'll be coming to you in a moment, but what does Torbay Weekly think about the beach reports?
Well, the danger is there's so much doom and gloom around, Steve, at the moment that Carolyn alluded to the journalism and the covering of Bournemouth. I think that nationally journalism hasn't done itself any favours with the way they've gone looking for sensationalist headlines when you don't need to do that. We're in the middle of the world's worst pandemic in 100 years. That's sensational anyway. So with the weekly, we're still focusing on all those things that are good happening locally in particular. This week, we're going to launch a campaign to save the zoo with Simon Targner Pippa, which is really good. And we've got a really good story from the college who've won a big Investment People award, the only one in the country, if not Europe. So there's those sort of things that we want to focus on rather than all the doom and gloom that is about at the moment, really.
Yeah, and it is great to see the weekly is featuring some good local stories. So thank you for the efforts. I mean, how's the deliveries going? Because is everybody getting the paper that should be getting it?
Yeah, we had a remit that we would target at least 15,000 selected postcode homes in the Bay, and we've now said that if you don't get one through your letterbox, you would pick one up at a location within a 10-minute walking distance of your home, and that's working really, really well. In the paper, you'll see at least 30 different outlets that now take the weekly, where you can pick it up from, and it's demand-led, Steve. If we get more demand for it, we'll increase the circulation, but it is really about revenues, about costs, and making sure that we survive in the middle of this weird launch period. So we're getting quite feedback from people saying, can we have it? And that's why we've increased that network of local pickup points around the Bay.
Yeah, well, it's good to see that the printed press is not dead, and at the moment it's not really going into so much fish and chips, is it? So
hopefully not, mate. Hopefully not. No.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And I'd like to welcome in now Simon Tong, sat there. Are you sat there at the zoo, or was that your front room, Simon?
Yeah, I wish, Steve. No, I'm at the zoo. I'm in our boardroom, which is just above the main entrance, and you can see the pictures behind me are of our the chairs, of the 5 chairs of our board since we opened nearly 100 years ago. Yeah,
yeah, and we are having some funner games at the moment. Emily, who would be running any slides that you've got, Simon, has at the moment dropped out. We're trying to get her back in, so I'm going to give you the platform.
Okay.
I think she might. So over to you, Simon. Yeah,
okay.
We are. She's wonderful. She's working in the background for us. Thanks, Emily. Over to you, Simon.
So, thank you very much, Steve, and thank you for everybody for taking the time to come and listen to me. My story is a complicated story, so bear with me while I just set the scene a little bit. And to understand it properly, you need to understand us as part of the Wild Planet Trust, which is I gave a talk at the Business Forum a year ago or so about why we've created this trust. Emily, if you could show the next slide, please. Is she there? No, can't do it.
Flying. We're flying by the seat of our pants.
Fine. We started off life as created by Herbert Whitley. When he died, we became all his works, the zoo and the various land he owned around Torbay in South Devon, became the Herbert Whitley Trust, which has evolved through the years through being the Whitley Wildlife Conservation Trust to the Wild Planet Trust that you see before you. And from our perspective, the rebrand as Wild Planet Trust was extraordinarily successful. We are a complicated organisation, as I say. We have 3 zoos, 2 of which sit under one company, 1 of which sat under its own. Okay, there's the background. That's how we became the Wild Planet Trust. Emily, if you could move on to the next slide, that would explain. No. No.
Simon, forgive me. What I'm doing is I'm having to text Emily when we have to move on. So it's all good fun.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, there's not that many slides. So here you can see our structure here. We are the 2 zoos, Painted Zoo and Newquay Zoo, under one company at one end. Living Coast there. We own bits of land around Torbay still. We own Slapton Lee in South Devon, which we lease to the Field Studies Council. And then we have various projects which we support across the world. And you can see some of the countries that we are active in. The entire organisation is charitable, except the small thing at the bottom there, Southwest Zoo Enterprises, which is our trading company. As I think you know, charities can't trade, but they can own subsidiaries that do. So we do all our retail and our catering through that, and they covenant all their profits up to the parent charities. Our annual surplus is pretty much what we make by trading. So the cost of the zoos run themselves. Bring you up to date. I think most of you are now aware that we have made the decision that Living Coast will not reopen again. And the reason for that is that it has required operational support for many years from the other zoos. And we were very happy to do that because it added to our charitable objectives. Unfortunately, the visitation to the other zoos has slid away over the last couple of years. And then this coronavirus pandemic was frankly the coup de grace, which meant that those zoos could no longer support Living Coast. So we had to make the difficult decision to close, or sorry, not to reopen. With regard to closure of our other 2 zoos, Carolyn's already mentioned the circumstances in late March. Technically, we were never ordered to close by government. We made a decision to close on the 23rd of March because of both media pressure. We were getting slaughtered, as were other zoos on social media that tried to stay open at the time, and because, frankly, we were getting about 25% of our budgeted visitor numbers, which was simply not economically viable. So as soon as we knew that the government had created the furlough scheme and that we could try and protect jobs and cut out costs at the same time, we took advantage of that furlough scheme, and we put more than 50% of our staff across the site onto that scheme, and we've been closed ever since. Occasionally since then, the government has, rather snidely in my view, made the point to us, oh, we never told you to close, you've closed voluntarily, so stop moaning to us about when you can get reopened. But you know, that's history now. So since the closure, we've been running, next slide please, Steve. We have been operating our zoos because, of course, zoos are very different from a lot of businesses, because running costs don't go away even if you haven't got visitors. Even if you're not open, your running costs are still very substantial. So we have had empty zoos, no income at all for 3 months, as pretty much every tourism business. Unfortunately, our running costs, our burn rate for those 3 months has been about £440,000 a month. So, you know, it's cost us, those 3 months have cost us the best part of 1.5 million, and that's even with the furlough scheme that the government has supported. And then on top of that income that we've, those expenditures that we've incurred, we have also, of course, lost the income that we'd have had. We lost, the February half term was appalling because the weather was dreadful, and we then lost Easter completely, and we've lost every weekend since, same as everybody. But that does mean that we're something like, probably now at the end of June, probably lost about £3.5 to £4 million of income on top of the extra 1.2 million quid that we've incurred just running ourselves. So we are a lot of money in the hole, frankly, and that is the reason behind why we declared 3 weeks ago that not only were we going to close Living Coasts, but we were going to make a substantial portion of our staff redundant, and we're going to lose something like just over 100 positions probably. We're in the consultation phase with that, talking to our staff, but it's not great. So when Carolyn talked earlier about a cliff edge coming later in the year, probably October, that's what we mean. That's what we mean. That's when the real redundancies start to kick in, and that's when we're going to see, in my view, a substantial amount of pain in Torbay. We've been talking the whole time we've been closed. Me and other zoos have been talking through our trade association, the British and Irish Association of Zoos and Aquariums, to government, to our ministry, DEFRA. And we've been talking to them very loudly about the situation we find ourselves in, the burn rate of our cash, and the fact that you know, we are going to struggle to get through this winter. You'll have seen headlines over the past 3 months about a zoos fund that has been talked about by government. 2 months ago, they made £14 million available, and yesterday, the weekend, they announced they were going to make £100 million available for zoo support. Okay, that's great notionally, but for example, of the 14 million they made available earlier, my understanding is that it's extremely undersubscribed. Probably only about a third of that has been taken up, and the reason is that they have made the conditions for accessing it so onerous that most of us cannot reach it. So we haven't yet seen the detail of what this new big scheme is going to be, but we've been told, for example, that each zoo will be capped at a maximum of £800,000, less the money you've already received on furlough. Well, you can immediately see that if we're £5 million in the hole, and some of my colleagues up country are in way worse position, then 800,000 quid ain't going to touch it. So, you know, we have relatively little faith in that as a support for us. I'm ready to be surprised and delighted if the conditions are changed. So we've been closed, and we have always planned. We took a punt on the idea that we would be allowed to reopen in early July. That was always our guess. It was never clear. The government wouldn't make it clear, and DEFRA ministers that we talked to certainly made it very clear that all decisions on this were being made in the centre, as they put it. And I think we all know who is making those decisions. So a lot of the decision making that affected us was erratic and inconsistent and hard to understand sometimes. So, for example, 3 weeks ago on the Saturday night, we were informed definitely, absolutely, that zoos would not be allowed to open before the beginning of July, and then literally on the Tuesday there was an announcement from the Prime Minister that they could reopen on the following Monday, which is 2 weeks ago. Some of my colleagues were in a position to do that. We were not, because we had furloughed so many staff. We will now reopen Paynton Zoo on the 6th of July. We opened Newquay Zoo yesterday, and that went very well. We are doing all the sorry, before I carry on, those are just some scenes of our empty Paynton Zoo pictures that I took back in July. Just it's very odd operating a zoo without people. Zoos and people kind of go together, and it's puzzling for the animals, it's puzzling for the staff, and it's very uncomfortable. Steve, next slide, please. So we are planning to open on 6th of July. As we've talked about, we will be hitting all the marks that we need to achieve in terms of health and safety, and trying to reassure our visitors that the place is COVID safe, or as COVID safe as we can make it. I mean, one of my colleagues used a phrase. My colleagues up country the other day, he used a phrase. We want to pack them in a COVID safe way. Which is kind of oxymoronic, trying to do those two things. But I know exactly what he meant. We are budgeting for relatively low numbers over the first week that we open. We'll open on Monday for our members only for the first 2 days, and only if they book slots. So we know exactly how many people will be coming in. But that would not be an economically sustainable model to go on doing that. We have to get away from that very quickly. And we have to, part of me wants to say to you, actually, those 500,000 people on the beach on Bournemouth, that's what we need desperately, because we are likely to get to a situation where at the end of August we will be running at something like 50% of our budgeted visitor numbers. We think 75% if we're lucky. That will generate, if we take out the government coronavirus loan, the CBIL, we take that out, which we will. We will have enough money to stagger through to next Easter. We think we will just get through the winter, but we will end up next Easter with no money in the bank and with a large debt and the CBILs, the coronavirus loans, and we will borrow probably £3 million to help us get through. That is supposed to be paid back in 6 years. Well, you can see that's going to be a massive sea anchor on us heading forward, when we'll have no money to invest in ourselves, and it will take us at least 2 years to get back up and running. Next slide, please, Steve. What I did want very much to say was we've been very touched by the support, both in kind and verbally, and in cash, from so many people, and Jim's work with Torbay Weekly is enormously appreciated, and the support from my next speaker, from Mark and his brewery again. There are too many people doing too many things for me to name them individually, but we are enormously grateful for that support, and we are going to go on needing it. I mean, all that support together has raised about £125,000 as of yesterday. Well, you can see, given the costs of running the zoos, how much more we need to find, and that's going to be our challenge going forward. So things, we are delighted that we will be reopening on Monday. We are looking forward to doing so because it's actually what we are for. But we do have some concerns and trepidations. We are very much of the view that we need to can't remember which politician was who said it, was set my people free. We need to set people free. We need to get doing the things that that we all love to do, and we need to get doing it pretty damn quick. So thank you for your time and attention, for making the effort this time in the morning, and I'll hand you back over to Steve.
Well, thank you, Simon. I mean, you talk about the using up reserves and then ending up on borrowed money. It's not a comfortable place to be. You think a £3 million C bill repayable over the 5 years is roughly £60,000 a month, and that just doesn't come easily, does it? So, well, I wish you luck with the reopening. And I know I've known the zoo since the 60s. When I used to go there as a primary school child, and we used to love the zoo, and it was it's still a wonderful place.
It is. It's stunning,
and it'll be nice. We can fast forward and get back to and thank you for what you do in bringing visitors to the Bay as well. It's great to have the Wild Planet Trust on our doorstep. Good luck with that. So we've had a few technical issues. I'm going to move on now to Jim, because he's got his hero of the fortnight, I think we'll call it, as opposed to hero of the week. And I'm just going to try and bring back in Mark Salmon if this will let me. We're having some interesting technical things. I'm texting Emily saying, can you do the next slide? Jim, you tell us who you're bringing in next, please. Thank you, Simon.
So I'm going to have a quick chat with Mr. Mark Salmon from Bytes Brewery, if he's around. Mark, are you around by any chance, or have you disappeared?
Can you hear me?
Here's his presentation. We've got it on slides.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
This is we can hear you.
Is this going to happen or not?
Yeah. Are you there, Mark?
We can hear you, Mark.
I can hear you both. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, mate. Let's
start.
Crack open a bottle, I think, Mark. Listen, Mark, Bytes Brewery at the heart of the community, it has been for a while. Just tell us before we go on about the history of Bytes, how it all began, and where you are at this moment in time with Bytes.
Yeah, Bytes has been around now since 2007, in fact, when we started. Myself, my brother Peter, and my brother-in-law Will. We joined forces, and we essentially started Bytes up very much as a business to be a part of the community. And hopefully it's been noticed that that's very much the way we operate. We like to engage in all things local, and we like to support everything that happens around the Bay to encourage tourism and the industry of smooth. Have I frozen?
No, you're okay. So Friday, March 23rd comes, and tourism and hospitality is on its knees. All the doors are closed. What happens to you on that day? Did you realise the impact that was going to be had on your business?
Yeah, I mean, like every business owner, I mean, it was a very challenging time, and I liken it to cruising along the motorway in your minibus with your team on board, suddenly slamming your brakes on, whacking it into reverse and hitting full throttle, and basically unraveling all the great work you've done. And I think, like every business owner, we've been through various sort of phases of this sort of lockdown period, where the first phase is shock, when you sort of think, this can't be happening to me, this can't be happening to my business. Then you move on to sort of anger phase, and you look to sort of blame somebody. And I think with the government making all decisions, I guess, you know, you kind of start pointing the finger at the government. They're the ones that shut down all the businesses, and you, at the time when Bytes got the announcements that pubs were closing, we were unaware of any furlough grant support or any support at all from the government. So I started, I think early one morning, 4 o'clock one morning, I sent Kevin Foster a few messages, and basically saying, look, we need help, we need it now. Without it, we're going to start making some big decisions that are going to affect people's livelihoods and affect local businesses. And fair play to Kevin, he responded at the same hour which I sent the messages, and but essentially his advice was to hang in there. There will be some advice coming. Don't make any big decisions. And fortunately, we did listen to Kevin, and we sort of we did hang fire. But yeah, going back to your question, I think it's around about 17th of March when Boris announced that we'd be looking at this pub closing on I think Friday the 20th of March, we gathered our team together at the brewery and essentially we looked at, we sort of reviewed our options, and we were very fortunate at the time that one of our options came from a very close friend of mine who heads up the distribution and warehousing of Warburtons. Warburtons at the time were having a whale of a time delivering bread. People were buying bread at the same sort of pace as toilet roll at the time, and so they were desperate for delivery drivers to get the stuff out, and we managed to second 6 of our team across to Warburtons, which was great for them, great for the brewery. But we were kind of left with the core team back at the brewery at that point, but also in somewhat of a quandary. Just a few weeks before that, we were installing pumps for our new Devon Cove Pale Ale, the launch of a new product, and we were brewing beer in preparation for what we were hoping was going to be a really busy season. We had some big events coming up.
We're breaking up. Mark, are you able to share your camera? Are you able to click the button to share your camera, please? Mark, can you share the camera?
Does that help?
There you go.
There you go. I'm live now. I wasn't given any technical sort of assistance at all on this, but no, just a week earlier, like I said, we were about to launch these new products. We've got we're gearing up for a real busy season, all these events, and suddenly be told that the pubs were closing and the industry was coming to a standstill was quite a shock to the system. And with this quandary, do we sort of hunker down and mothball the brewery, or do we start sort of ramping up? And it was decision time really. And what happened, what we actually did was what Bytes do best, and we put a post out on Facebook pleading to family and friends and the local communities for support to kind of sell our stock at that point and clear the brewery and at least get something back for all this beer that we had produced. And boy, did we get it, and we were inundated. We had our posts went viral. We had over 1 million views, I think it was. We had several thousand shares and comments. Phones are ringing off the hook. The emails are coming in quicker than we could read them. It was quite an extraordinary experience, but also quite surreal given the period that we had just been through. But at the same time, it was sort of overwhelming but heartwarming. We were kept busy then for a good couple of weeks. Processing those orders in the days that followed the post. We had family, we had friends, we had our customers coming in to help us, and we had the challenges of social distancing and managing the hygiene measures, but we succeeded, and in the process we created this whole new online retail operation. So we were very much at this stage back in business, and we started brewing again. We set to sorting out our systems, and then we fast-tracked the development of a completely new online shop, which essentially enabled us to automate our whole sales process to help our clients. But that also integrates in with the brewery management system, our distribution processes. So really, we now have quite an efficient process. So it wasn't quite Amazon, but we started seeing some light at the end of a fairly dark tunnel. And really, since then, Jim, the online sales have continued. And whilst not quite the same as trade, it's certainly kept the brewery in business and kept us brewing, which is obviously the important thing.
Yeah, I remember that Facebook post, Mark. At that time, how many pints of beer did you have in danger of going to waste? Was it quite a sizable amount, wasn't it?
Oh, we're talking about tens of thousands of beer. Yeah, Jim, there was stock there. We just prepared for the launch of our Devon Cove, and we had kegs of Devon Cove, we had bottles of it. We were, like I say, we were in a real quandary at that point because we didn't know as well at that point whether we were actually allowed to continue selling. It wasn't until the sort of information started drip feeding out of the government that we realised that we were fortunate that we could actually start selling it. So all this, we were making decisions without knowing really where we stood as a business. Our first thoughts were, we've got to close down. Clearly that wasn't the case, and we were fortunate that we were one of the businesses that could continue.
Okay, and you alluded to this. I think that the new norm for lots of companies will be what you're doing now. You've had to totally reshape your business to survive. Is that going to impact you going forward? How has that reshaped Bytes Brewery for the future, Mark? Well,
it's interesting that because the whole up to the point of lockdown, we hadn't really done an awful lot of retail or online sales. So as I said a minute ago, we basically have transformed the business. We've created a whole new business within the brewery, which we never had before. and developing the whole systems, the online shop. We've now partnered with a number of other local Devon drinks producers. We've got Brixton Gin, Deck Chair Gin, Hattie's Rum, Sharpen Wine. We're still continuing to work with our great friends Hunt Cider, promoting their products too. So we've created this whole new business within a business. So we're kind of hoping that, you know, our plan is to obviously continue that very much at the same pace as we are now, but also, as importantly, we've got to continue supporting our trade clients. And you know, one of the things that happened probably about 4 or 5 weeks ago is that some of our trade clients were allowed to start operating as takeaways. So we were right there helping them. So obviously we were already brewing, so we were able to quickly respond to them with stock. And we had outlets like Breakwater Bistro, Guardhouse Cafe, Borsands Bistro, Cantina, Shoreline, at the Boathouse, offshore. We took on the Babacon Hotel in Babacon Downs, which obviously is, and so they've been having a great time delivering takeaway products and services to the Torbay people. So yeah, I think, you know, we have changed the business. The business has changed, and we, like every business out there, we've had to take a good hard look at ourselves and a good hard look at our future. No, I do feel extremely positive as to what could happen next. I mean, don't get me wrong, we have some concerns. I mean, July the 4th is a big day. It's my mum's 70th as well, which is obviously important, and so it's celebrations all around. But this doesn't mark the end of COVID by any means, and we've got to know COVID is very much here to stay, and pubs and customers are going to have to get used to this new way of living. And if we don't get it right, the ramifications are huge. So we've just seen what's happened to Leicester. We've watched the United States. We've watched them open their pubs and now having to close them again. And clearly, Torbay cannot afford to get this wrong. Now, if we get it wrong in the middle of the tourism in summer, the busy tourism in summer, then we've got big problems on our hands. So, but we've got to remain positive. Now, we've got to look positive in the future. And right now, the positive thing is that pubs and clubs and restaurants, not clubs, but pubs and restaurants are reopening on the 4th of July, and we're here and ready to serve.
That's brilliant. That's exactly what we should be thinking about as well. And again, I think without that, and in particular in your case, the community, Mark, they've really rallied since you had to do what you've done, and just shows that Torbay is together. How big was that for you?
So the community. I mean, when all this went pear-shaped back in March, and we launched these sort of the big sell-off, as we call it, of all our stock, with the idea that we were closing down. Yeah, the support that we got from the community and our friends, our family, our clients, it was just phenomenal. It was really heartwarming. And you know, our drivers have been out there delivering. I call them front line. You know, getting beer to the public is front line as far as I'm concerned. But they were getting greeted with cupcakes on the doorstep, lovely notes. We've had the most fantastic amount of feedback from our customers, and we are so grateful for the support we've had. You know, without it, the brewery would not be what it is today. And I think, you know, we with that, and as I said a minute ago, when we started the brewery up, we very much wanted to be a community business, and now more than ever, you know, we want to put more back into the community. And Simon's just talked about the zoo, and I'm a trustee of the zoo, and clearly I've been very much involved in that over the last few months too. And it's so sad, you know, some of the outcomes there with Living Coast having to close. But just because it's reopening doesn't mean that the zoo is heading into safe territory. We've got to continue to support the zoo. At the end of the day, at the brewery, we've worked for a number of years on different zoo products and different ale products, for crocodile, tall order for giraffes, trunk ale for elephants. We've raised sort of nearly £20,000 to the zoo now. But more recently, we've done we did a Save the Zoo campaign for the zoo, which was just encouraging people to donate to the zoo, because at the end of the day, the zoo needs funds. Just because it's reopening doesn't mean it's all going to be well. We've got to encourage more support.
Yeah, well, that's a great.
Steve's about to shut me up there. So
just two words for Bayes Brewery: naturally inspiring. Steve, over to you, mate.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for bringing Mark along today. It's fantastic, Mark. And the message. Loving the product mix at the moment, by the way. The Devon Cove although it would have preferred to open on a bigger day, I think that Devon Cove and Devon Rock are really storming the way, aren't they? So one thing that does hurt is seeing the beer destruction program going on at the moment. Did you have to phone Southwest Water?
Well, fortunately, though, we weren't. We managed to keep our stocks flowing, so we were fortunate we didn't actually end up having to destroy any stock. But obviously, many of our pubs have had to, and we've had to work closely with the HMRC duty to ensure that the processes are followed, and they have clearly had to pour a lot of beer down the drains, which is obviously extremely sad. But given the longevity of this sort of lockdown period, we had no option, because the product obviously doesn't have a great long life on it. So yeah, around the country there's been millions and millions of pints of beer being tipped down the drain, and Southwest Water and different water companies give you a certain period of time at which you can do that, and obviously they can keep control of it that way. But yeah, it's not been great.
No, I assume you'd be looking at sell-by dates on future products so that it lasts a bit longer.
If we could sort of make the beer life longer, that would be great for us. But in fairness, most people drink our beer fairly quickly, so it doesn't hang around on the shelves too long.
This one here says August 17. I found it at the back of the cupboard, so I must catch up.
Steve, that's embarrassing. How can you let beer in the back of your cupboard that long?
Sorry.
We were frozen. Stephen's frozen by the looks of it. I think just to finish off, I think we live in one of the most fantastic, naturally inspiring, Jim, you like that, parts of the UK. We really do. And I think the key thing is that we look after each other, we look after the community, we support everything local. Obviously, we visit the zoo, and I think most importantly, we need to drink some more bays. So cheers, everybody. And
yeah,
thank you. Stephen's gone now, so
well, look, can I on behalf of Steve say thanks to Carolyn, to Simon, to Mark, and July the 4th beckons. I wish you all the very best going forward in a responsible manner, of course, and I'm sure that people like you are the heart of Torbay and will make it work, because that's what you've done so far. And I just want to say a big thank you to people like you that have kept us going since lockdown, and the future is really positive. So I wish you all the best. I haven't got a clue where Steve Reynolds has gone. He's probably in some cave drinking a bottle of beer somewhere. But can I say thank you to all of you? Have a good day, have a good week, and have a good rest of the summer season. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you, Simon.
Okay, bye.
Bye.